What's up, everybody, and welcome to a Tuesday Stanley Cup Final edition of Morning Cuppa Hockey presented by Bet365. Check out Bet365's 3-goal early payout. When your team goes up 3, you get paid. It's that simple. Download the app today. You must be 19 plus, so please play responsibly. And we are also presented by Parasso, the most complete choice for shaving and beard care. Made in Italy since 1948, Parasso has been a staple of Italian culture and barbershops globally for 4 generations. So get 15% off at Parasso-USA.com with our promo code Hockey15 in all caps. Hockey15. That's Colby Cohen. I'm Jonny Lazarus. Vic is back today, so everyone wish him a warm welcome back after his little break, thanks to his newborn daughter. We got Steve Werier coming on at around 9:30. We got Tyler Yaremchuk checking in from Vegas at around 10 a.m. We will not have a guest for the first 30 minutes, so we'll do a lot of talking with you, the chat, the people who listen to our show. Colby, I don't know about you. Yesterday, I got a lot of messages from people siding with me, people siding with you about our whole Larkin debate. That whole thing took on a life of its own.
Yeah, I saw that. I was looking at the comments of the stream. Like, not only was it very sort of split.
Someone called me a diehard Devils fan, which I found interesting.
People were really passionate on this one about like which side they were on. So it was interesting. Yeah, you're right. It did take on a life of its own. It's been a while since like we had one of those where, and you stayed in the fight too. You tried to get out of it.
I still think the same. I still think the same.
You tried to get out of the argument halfway through by just telling me that I was being ridiculous or whatever.
You called me a communist.
You do. Well, you're acting like one. I mean, let's be honest. I know you had to Google what communist is. I know that.
I didn't Google it, and I still don't even really know what it is.
Exactly.
But I know it's not a good thing.
Well, it depends. I don't know. Some people seem to like that these days, but
yeah,
I always take the side. You know this. I don't. And Drew Shore, I loved his chime in yesterday. I really did, and I still, I still just don't see. I still truly believe, Jonny, like even the more that I think about it, when you think of a salary cap, a triple hard salary cap, which is what the NHL is, and you even look at the new LTIR rules, there is very little wiggle room around this salary cap. And I just don't think that even if you have a top heavy team, you're going to win. And that's where I would have so much pushback on this whole argument in a more controlled measure. Like obviously yesterday we just started yelling at each other.
Well, it was also breaking news. Like we were reacting pretty much live to what had been announced of the 3 teams. Like we didn't know that going in. Like that was true live show, finding something out and having your initial feelings aired out.
Well, I just think that if you look at some of the struggles, Jonny, of let's say the teams that have won the cup, like you even look at the quote unquote dynasties and you look at the Chicago Blackhawks, and then like that team, when you actually look at it, you could say that had sort of like a feel of like a building super team, a superpower. They won 3 cups in 6 years. And you look at the minute Patrick Kane and Jonathan Toews got their big money because they earned it, the whole thing started going downhill because you weren't able to pay guys at the bottom anymore. And that's where I still think, like, if you go out and you bring a Dylan Larkin into a team like the Florida Panthers that's already paying a lot of players $10 million or more, and I know that number's about to change because of the new dynamics of the salary cap and the way that it's rising, I think that at that point, you're going to lose the bottom. And you can look at these teams and what do we always say? Like the Edmonton Oilers have a couple of guys that make a lot of money, but they don't have the depth, right? You look at Tampa, it feels like Tampa's been top heavy for a while because they pay so many guys handsomely at the top of their roster. So that's where I say you have to go dollars out, dollars in to bring in an 8 or 9 or 10 or $12 million player. And that's the range that Larkin is. And that's where, like, I saw yesterday, if they were going to make a deal in Florida for a guy like Larkin and you want to offer, here's the 9th pick, here's our top prospect. Also, you're going to have to say goodbye to a guy like Carter Verhaeghe or a guy like Lundell
A current NHLer.
Yeah, so you're pulling out one of the fabrics of a team to bring in a guy like Larkin, and that's, I mean, that's why I don't think you're gonna see the super team idea that you're worried about. Like
I'm
the
not
NBA.
so passionate about that. The one thing I will say though, I do feel bad that there is a lot of like Larkin's name being dragged in the mud because of this.
Of
Like
course there is, because that's what happens.
I know, but I wasn't trying to do that. I don't know if I came across in that sense because I was trying to get across that I'm fully supportive of Larkin wanting out. And I hope that all fans can kind of see that. Even the Red Wings fans could understand why he'd want out. I feel like, I had no problem with that. And I think that's where maybe arguments got lost. Like even, going back and forth with Drew on Twitter, I feel like that wasn't necessarily clear that I felt strongly that I agree with Larkin wanting out. It was the limited options, and the two teams of the three that were the options. Like, I know we don't want to get back into this argument right now, but I just wanted to make that clear that like Larkin doesn't necessarily deserve to be hated for this, right? Like I don't want him to be hated for wanting out of Detroit. Like that's not what I was trying to get at yesterday. And that's all I kind of wanted to clear up in what we argued about yesterday. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that. We
No,
can
I
kind of
don't
go
think
into the
that was.
news.
I think you were clear. You just
Yeah.
have an issue with two of the three teams. You want him to go to New Jersey because you want Devils fans to like you.
Yeah. Well, no. Well, I was even going at it in our Discord. We have a Discord like for the show of our chat, and JT in the Discord and I were going. Like I was fired. Emily was like poking me on the treadmill. We were walking the treadmill next to each other, and I was like fired up, like writing back at JT in our Discord. And then Wire Marine saying wanting out is fine. Trying to force his way to certain spots is bullshit. If it's so bad, he should accept pretty much every team that isn't Detroit. See, I don't agree with that. And you said to me yesterday, Colby, come up with a way where if a player wants out, there's what do you say, like a give back? I think that's how you phrased it.
There should be, just like,
and I do think if a player asks out and they have a no trade or no move, then there should be 50% of the league that's off limits that they can't go to, and the other 16 teams should be fair game. Yeah, I think you're.
But what happens if a GM asks you to waive your no trade clause? Like what it's if a player asking out, how is it different than a GM asking you to waive your no trade clause?
Well, a player can force his way to a certain spot. Like a player can ask.
I'm asking you. How is it different? Like, why would the player asking out all of a sudden be open to something that's
because
not
the GM's
in his contract?
The GM's trying to make his team, the larger collective, better.
Okay, I get it. And the player wants to make his situation better. He signed a long-term deal under the guise that you were going to do your job and build a good team. After 11 years, you haven't. Okay, so why should I be basically say what? Like, if I sign this contract and it's contractually written right in ink and both parties agree to it, okay, why can one side ask the other to move off of it and say this is where I want you to go? And the player can't.
Well, you have the right to say no. You have the right to say no.
Of course, you have the right to say no. I totally agree. The general manager also has the right to not oblige.
If a guy says, "I want to go to this team,"
but what I'm asking you is now you're putting parameters in place that favor the general manager. Why? They both equally agreed and put their signature on paper to this contract.
It's a tough question. I mean, it's a tough question. I do think they are, in theory, like the same thing. They are. Like it's hard to argue that they're not the same thing. But I guess when a GM asks a player to waive, though, not every player gets vilified. Though you've used some examples.
Yes, they do.
Like, well, look at the Rangers. I don't think anyone's vilifying Vinny Trocheck.
Everybody murdered Jacob Trouba for not wanting it, and then they killed Barclay Goodrow for not wanting to waive it. They circumvented the rules, and come on. I mean, Parayko didn't waive.
I think Goodrow was more people against Drury than against Goodrow, And Trouba, I mean, people wanted Trouba out to begin with.
I've never seen you really take a hard stance against the way Chris Drury. I mean, let's talk about Chris Drury. He has handled this stuff in the most savage, I don't care about you way of any manager in the National Hockey League. Okay. Yeah. And that is his right to do so. And I have said, I don't think that really matters that much because players will still want to play for the New York Rangers. It's the New York Rangers. Okay. Mm-hmm. I've really never heard you, and I get it. You are always a little cautious about what you say about the Rangers because you don't want your press pass revoked, and I can understand that a little bit. And teams do that.
I don't think that I'm really like that. I mean, obviously, I'm a little more cautious, but I don't think I just hold back fully. Like I've criticized Drury plenty, but I also. Do I agree with the way he goes about it? No, but do I like that he's aggressive? Yes, I've always been supportive of Drury being aggressive. I think like we've applauded Kelly McCrimmon and the Vegas Golden Knights for being aggressive and not doing things the traditional or orthodox way. Like, does Drury miss a lot? Yes. But does he swing? Sure. And I love that. I'd rather a guy who takes swings than a guy who sits on his hands. So I'm not like a Chris Drury hater.
No, I get it. But I'm saying the way he's handled Trouba, leaking things.
That was terrible. I hated that. I hated every part of that.
Listen, but at the end of the day, that was his decision, right? Mm-hmm. Like that was his right. He's got a job to do.
Being liked,
but as you shouldn't as a general manager. Yeah. Trying to worrying about being liked as a general manager is the kiss of death, Jonny. If you're worried about what fans think, if you're worried about what player, it will be the kiss of death at the end of the day. Now, a guy like Billy Guerin has found a way to kind of thread the needle, and his players love him, but he has to make the moves that he has to make. I mean, think of the guys that he bought out. Right. He didn't exactly, make those decisions easily. So look, at the end of the day here, everybody's like, well, let's just put it in the CBA that this will, if a player asks out, this is we'll just take their no trade clause goes away if they ask for a trade or their no move clause. The NHLPA is a partner.
I don't agree with that. Yeah, I don't.
No, I know. I just want to say this out loud to people because I saw that the NHLPA is their partner. They have to sign off on the collective bargaining agreement. And they would never sign off on something like that unless the NHL came to them and said, okay, we want to do away with these and we'll do away with the salary cap. That would be one of the only ways I would ever see players give this up. Players have such a small amount of control compared to a manager or an owner. And that's okay. That's the world we live in. There's a power structure, but the players would never, ever, ever, the players union would never agree to that other than maybe if the NHL said, we'll do away with the salary cap. We want you to do away with no move, no trades, or we want to change the powers of those things. But they would never agree to that. And I don't blame them. Like, it's always about control and power, and both sides want it as much as they possibly can, and both sides needs to argue what they need to argue. And what I do believe, Jonny, and I've said this numerous times, is I believe the fans are way quicker to vilify players than they ever are to vilify owners, and they ever are to vilify general managers. We always go for the players' throats, and we never sort of zoom out and look at the situation like from a higher, from 50,000 feet as all the other factors of what goes on in somebody's life and in and around a hockey team. And so it's just, we're quick to, and Larkin is being vilified, and every writer under the sun, of course, the group of people that knows the least about this sport, they all had a problem with Larkin. He shouldn't want to go here. This is an easy way out. There is no easy route to the Stanley Cup. There's no easy route. Ask the Colorado Avalanche, right? Is there an easy route to the Stanley Cup? Nobody thought Vegas was going to win a Stanley Cup this year. Remember that? Like, they fired their coach with 2 weeks left before the playoffs, right? I mean, this is not something anybody suspected. Have they been really good for a while? Have they challenged every year? Have they been mercenaries at the trade deadline? Do they seem to go out and get all these big name guys that want to come to Vegas? Yes, they do. They do. They've done a great job of that.
So let me just address Jay Theon in the chat. I don't know who he's referring to as VT, but he said this is exactly how modified no move, no trades work, in quotes. I'll waive for these teams only, which is exactly what Larkin is doing. And here's where I think this is different. Like the no trades, the no moves were originally intended to protect players against being moved somewhere they don't want to live or play, right? It's their right. It's their protection for their families and for where they want to be. But if they use it to then force a move to a small number of contending teams, that is not protection anymore. That is like trying to dictate an outcome of where you're going to go next. That's where this is different because there's 5 years left. Like, do you see that?
I understand what the cause was, and I understand that we're living in a new era.
This is not about protecting Larkin, though, and that's why it's different.
Players having more balls to step outside the norms of hockey culture, right? Players generally fall in line, and players generally don't think about themselves first. They don't do that. They never have. Guys don't want to go on and say things that their teammates are going to give them shit about. They don't want to be individualistic. It's just, that's why I always say when you talk to players, the best question you can ask a player is about another player. If you want to get a guy to give you a good long answer, ask him about their line mate. Ask him about Braden McNabb. The guys want to talk more about Braden McNabb than any player ever wants to talk about themselves. It's just how hockey guys are wired. And if they're not wired that way, they fake it because that's just the culture we're in. So we don't, remember something.
We don't. Can I say one thing?
Jonny, go ahead.
Like with Hansley way. Okay, so if we only had 1 year left, it would be okay. Perfectly fine with it. 1 year left, perfectly fine. Because guess what? Your contract's going to be up, and then you got to negotiate with some other team. I think 1 year left. I have no issue with him choosing a destination.
Do you have an issue with Bill Guerin buying out Parise and Suter with how many years left they had on their contract? Do you have an issue with that?
How many years were left?
I don't remember the exact number.
Yeah.
But I know there was a substantial time on their contracts. Are you okay with that?
Yeah. I don't see why not.
Okay. So again, you're okay. You're not okay with a player with 5 years left asking out because they are very unhappy with the situation, but you're okay with the general manager.
See, there you go. There you go. I am okay with him asking out.
Oh, you just said you'd be okay with it if it was 1 year. You're not okay with it at 5 years.
No, I'm okay. I'm okay with him choosing a destination for 1 year. If he said, like, trade me to Vegas with 1 year left, trade me to Florida with 1 year left. When there's 5 years left, that's different. I feel like you twisted my words there. I made it perfectly clear.
I'm not trying. Here's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to counter these things. If you're okay with it here, I'm trying to understand. Like, I get it. You're okay with Larkin asking out. You're not okay with him controlling his destination. That's the base of this argument. Well, the base of this conversation.
I'm okay with him giving options for a destination, not 3 teams, 2 of which have just won cups.
So then, how many teams is acceptable to you then, Jonny?
6 teams. Name 6 teams. I don't care. 6 teams.
Do you know for a fact that he only gave the list of 3 teams? Do you know that?
That's what was reported.
I get it, but like, do we know that as a fact? Elliot Friedman came out and said he's heard other teams.
I'm just reacting to what the report was. Yeah, and that's all that I know.
I want to be honest with you here, Jonny. I truly believe you're talking out of both sides of your mouth on this. I don't think I'm putting words in your mouth.
I think I've stood pat on my exact point the entire time, and you've made different questions and arguments to it. Like, you kept bringing up Colton Parayko yesterday. I wasn't talking about Colton Parayko. You kept using him as an example.
I know, but if we take the name away and we just look at the situation, I'm trying to understand your different situations here, how you would view certain situations. That's all I'm trying to do. That's why I asked you about, are you okay with a general manager buying a guy out of their deal with 4 years left? Are you okay with that? Because again, that's a general manager saying, this is what's best for my team. I know you have 4 years
left. That's their job.
Contract. Okay, no problem. So again, that's a GM flexing leverage. Okay. It's flexing.
Yes.
There's nothing in the CBA that says you can't ask out of a trade. There's nothing that says it's illegal to say, I don't want to play here anymore. Right. So again, everybody is just doing what they think is best for them. So I just am trying to understand a little bit more, because I guess what I don't understand here is why you're so caught on the fact that you're okay with not okay with 3 teams, but you'd be okay with 6 teams. How do you know that Steve Eisman isn't sitting here? How do we know that for sure it's only these 3 teams? How do we know that he may not go back to them and say, hey, listen, what about these other 2 teams? And also, those teams have to want Dylan Larkin first and foremost. Do we think that they would? Yeah, we think that they would. And here's the best part, Johnny. You're not actually, you're okay with the 3 teams. You're only okay with one of the 3 teams.
Yeah.
You're being very selective about what you're okay with. That's where the holes, like, that's where I don't find your argument to be any credible whatsoever, because you're okay with Minnesota because they haven't won in a while, but you're not okay with 2 teams.
They've won one playoff round in 12 years. He could help them win. The other 2 teams have won without him. They don't need Larkin to win. I want to see Larkin go to a team that needs him to help them win. Those 2 teams don't. I'm saying, I'm coming at it from a fan perspective, Colby. And when a guy like Dylan Larkin, a captain, someone who's considered a star in the NHL, restricts himself to 2 of the past couple Stanley Cup champions, which again is legal, under contract, whatever. He's agreed to it. The Detroit's agreed to it. Whatever. But it just ruins the competitive balance of the league. And to me, it weakens the trade market for the whole league. Because if these guys only want to go to those destinations, all the other teams, like the traditional teams, are screwed.
They're screwed. Does Dylan Larkin make you a Stanley Cup favorite? Is he that caliber
I used
player?
the Devils as an example yesterday. If Dylan Larkin were traded to the Devils for Mercer Nemitz, this year's 12th overall pick, or 13th maybe, whichever one it is, I think the Devils become a legit contender down the middle with Hischier, Hughes, and Larkin. That is a incredible 1-2-3 when it comes to centers. I think he turns the Devils into a legitimate Stanley Cup contender. That's why I use them as an example. I am not a Devils fan. I don't think he does that to Philly. I don't think he does that to Pittsburgh, but there are teams he can go to that teeter them over that line.
Okay. So you want to decide where he goes, and I'm vehemently against that. Then
my God. You see, you're just like, it's not like I want to decide where he goes. I want to see him help a team become a Stanley Cup contender, not go to a team that already is one without him. That's
okay, but
that's
Johnny,
all I've been arguing for.
I understand that. So you are saying I'm okay with him leaving with 5 years left as long as he doesn't go to these 2 teams. That's the base of the argument for you, right?
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay,
that's
cool.
all I've been saying.
Let's make sure we clip that last 15 seconds, Vic, because it's the most insane thing I've ever heard. And
here we go.
The least credible argument I've ever heard. And
you're just not a fan of the league. You're not a fan.
Of course, I'm a fan of the league.
I'm a
Johnny.
fan. You're not a fan.
I'm poking holes in all of your argument.
No,
here.
I know like you just don't understand. It's like insane how you keep twisting everything. Like our chat, like Weinberg 85. What Johnny is saying is he wants competitive balance, and if good players all start playing on the same teams, it makes the regular season boring.
All start playing on the team. There's a triple hard salary cap. They're not all going to fit. How are you going to ice a roster? You're not going to have 3 guys maxing out your cap. You need fucking 23 skaters on a hockey team.
You just don't get it. You just don't get it. So let's just.
I don't get it. Okay.
Let's move on.
I don't get it. Got it.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Let's talk about Mike Babcock, because that was big news yesterday. We can talk about Pierre Laviolette taking his 7th job in the NHL at the LA Kings. Not much really to get into there. The LA Kings are in a very weird spot with their age and just the direction of that team. They don't really have tons of prospects. Interesting hire to go with Laviolette, but I think Mike Babcock is the big news, right? And we'll get into that with Steve Werier when he joins as well. But your initial thoughts, I mean, I feel like we're on the same page with this one. I don't know how anyone could be super thrilled to hear Mike Babcock's name coming back to the NHL. Your thoughts when you heard that news yesterday about Babcock and the Oilers? And we'll ask Tyler too when he comes on.
It seems like a desperate move for the Edmonton Oilers. It's just, I remember reading a tweet from Darren Dreger that Vic actually resent us this morning, but he said to Darren Dreger, and I quote, "Dregs, I'm retired and I'm loving it." I just, it seems now we're hearing that he spoke directly to Daryl Katz in Edmonton. All I hear is that, Daryl Katz meddling. I mean, when is it ever a good thing for an owner to meddle? Like, I can maybe think of one situation where it's worked really well, and it's Carolina, and it's because the owner sort of acts as a co-GM, but it's just it's a different setup there. To me, this seems wildly, wildly desperate. My understanding of the whole situation was that the owner said you have to go out and find a coach that has won a Stanley Cup. And I just, man,
20 years ago,
at it, I look at it and I think that, to me, when you have a parameter for a job, and we've seen this in some other really, really high level positions in our, in our society, where, somebody came out and said, I'm going to hire a person because they have these traits. And then you don't go out and hire the best person for the job because you have to check certain boxes. I'm not a fan of that type of hire. And I think there were probably other coaches out there that you could have gone out and found that do have winning pedigrees, that can command a room, and that aren't an absolute creep. And I don't mind a hard coach. I played for plenty of them. But a coach that's a creep, a coach that's using players to basically shit talk other players with, like, who's the hardest worker, who's the best teammate, let me see your cell phones, like all that stuff. Like, to me, that's you being a creep. That's not being a hard-nosed, demanding coach, right? Because I do think hard-nosed, demanding coaches have won Stanley Cups in the recent. I mean, Bruce Cassidy won one. You can look at other coaches that have won, and I think Paul Maurice is extremely demanding of his players. He's not a walk in the
feels
park
different
whatsoever,
yeah.
But he's demanding, right? I mean, I think that you can have both. So my issue here, Jonny, is this feels desperate, and it just feels like ownership is way too involved here.
Yeah.
And I think, when does that ever work out? It really doesn't.
Well, do you think it's real? Like, I saw a comment in our chat. I'm trying to find who said it, about, like, maybe this is Edmonton. Oh, here you go. It was official Nickel City Grunge. Maybe they're just forcing the league's hand to make Vegas release Cassidy. It's Cassidy or Babcock. Like, I have seen a couple people make that opinion, not just in our chat. I've seen that online as well, of maybe this is the Oilers just trying to, like, throw something out there to throw either the league off, teams off. I mean, I don't know how much I buy into that, but is that something that could be possible?
Bruce Cassidy's never getting permission to go to the Oilers. He's never getting permission. I could see them saying to Bruce, if in October or November there's a coaching job vacancy, I could see at that point, I could see Vegas being okay with it. They're not going to give him permission this summer. It's just not going to happen. They're going to hang on to it. So, and we have a chatter here that says Gordon Graham, I think is the name here. And he says, Babcock is a good hockey coach. Gen Z hockey players are soft. I don't think guys have any real issue playing for a hard-nosed coach. I don't think guys have any issue playing for Bruce Cassidy. Like, there's plenty of guys left. I don't think Peter Laviolette's a walk in the park to play for. I don't, and there's nothing, John Tortorella, like, I think players crave coaches that can be black and white honest with you.
That's
guys
what Carb
don't
says all
want
the
to
time.
be guys don't want to be bullshitted. That's why I think so many players truly love playing for Torts, even though he's one of the most demanding and at times difficult guys there is. Claude Julien, he was difficult and demanding. But if guys know where they stand with you, I think you have the opportunity to get the best out of a lot of your players. I think the things that Mike Babcock has done, Gordon, and I'm still, talking to you and talking about your comment, is like going into guys' phones and asking Mitch Marner to rate who works hard and then telling the other players the rankings that Mitch Marner gave them or situations like that in Toronto, that is not Gen Z hockey players are soft. That's being an absolute
mentally
creep.
fucking with your players.
It's just being a creep. That's
it's
just
like
an abuse of
power
power.
trip. Yeah.
Okay. That's just, you're just abusing the power structure. And so I don't think that there's any situation here where players are soft. And I think players in Edmonton would have been thrilled to have Bruce Cassidy. That guy is the farthest thing from a walk in the park. But he's not going to bring you into the office and say to you, what do you think about this guy's practice today? And then bring that guy into the office and say, guess what he just told me about you? Okay. Like, there's a huge difference between those two things. And I can understand where people that have never been in the locker room could you're just going to blanket it and say Gen Z hockey players are soft. That's not what we're talking about here. Okay. It's not what we're talking about. A creep versus a hard-nosed, demanding coach. There's a reason Laviolette just got another job. There's a reason Tortorella just got another job. There's a reason Bruce Cassidy is the most in-demand coach in the National Hockey League, okay? These are not guys that are walks in the park to play for. It's the opposite. They are extremely demanding. But again, there's a difference between demanding and abusive.
Look at the comment from Michael Baer.
Or demanding and being an absolute creep to your players. I'm sorry. There's a huge difference in those two things.
Michael Baer just said, if the Red Wings who won multiple cups say Babcock is a dick, I trust them. Like, if guys who won a Stanley Cup with this man, like Johan Franzen, I know Matt Boss one just wrote it again as another one. Like, if you are speaking out so passionately about a guy that you dislike, a guy that you won with, there's clearly a problem. But also to that, Colby, maybe the Oilers don't care. Maybe they are that desperate to win that this is where they're going. Like, they don't give a
Johnny,
shit.
I just said it. They gave their general manager a box. They said
they just
you have
don't
to check
care.
these boxes. They didn't say go out and hire the best guy available.
Yeah.
They said you've got to check boxes. And the main box being he's a hard ass and a Stanley Cup winner. Like, again, you're eliminating so many good coaches when your mentality is that narrow-minded, and that's why you should let your general manager make the hire and not have your owner be the one who makes the hire, right? And with every coach, there's going to be players who love you and players who hate you. It doesn't matter. Even John Cooper has guys who hate playing for him and who hate him. It happens, right? It's just how it goes. But it just, to me, Johnny, this just reeks of desperation.
Yeah, and General Soreness said it too. What Babcock did to Marner is one of the most egregiously awful things I've heard a coach do to a player. Trust is everything. That's unforgivable in my book. And that's honestly, I think, the biggest thing as a player. Like, I know, again, I never played in the NHL, but if you do have a coach that you feel like you can trust, a guy that when you like step into the elevator with or find yourself alone in the hallway and you can't even like look at them or have a real conversation, like that to me is where it is like a huge problem. Like, if you can't even say hello or good morning to your coach, like that is, I feel like how players, or from what I have heard, felt about him. But I know there are people who do dude, Coach Carr worked with Babcock very closely. Like, he always speaks very highly of him and how he learned a lot from him. I mean, maybe, that's just from the hockey X's and O's perspective, but like, there are people who know that he can win.
There was another comment Gordon made, and he said, what do you think the coaches were like in the 60s and the 70s? But like, Gordon, like, come on. I don't know. I think we've all heard the stories, but what in life is the same as the 60s and the 70s? That's, you know what I mean? I mean, my father was a child in the 60s. Like, we're talking about, we can't compare the way we used to do something in the 60s or the 70s to today. People are just different. I mean, again, like,
all right, yeah, Gordon's coming at me now about what matters is what they do on the ice, not whether they have a combo with them in the elevator.
Yeah, but
Gordon,
again,
how old is
Johnny's
Gordon?
not wrong.
How old is Gordon?
You really like. You can be a human being. It's not how and to be honest with you, I've heard stories from the 60s and 70s where the coaches were smoking cigarettes with the players, right? They might have been screaming and yelling at him, but they were smoking cigarettes together. They were drinking at the bar together. Look, I have sat, and I have said this before, and I have told you guys what my experience was like playing for Bruce Cassidy. And I've told you the way we butted heads. And I told you the way he butted heads with everybody. But I've also said to you guys how smart he was, how good he was with the X's and O's. And I've sat and I've drank when I was during the playoffs, whether it was, we were getting bag skated, and then we'd all go eat lunch together a lot of days. And he was just a normal human being with us to sit there and have a beer and have lunch. Like that stuff goes a long way. It's why Bruce, who is as demanding and sarcastic and can be a dick, it's why he keeps getting hired. He does really good X's and O's, and he just enough of the human side of it to keep himself as the most high demand coach there is. And then his expiration date happens and you move on to the next guy.
Good. We got Steve Werier here, former assistant GM on the Florida Panthers. Okay. Yeah, so let's bring him in. We'll work him into the conversation. I mean, we can bounce all over the place with Steve. Good morning, Steve. Good to see you. Good to have you on here. I know this is the first time we're chatting face-to-face, but it's been great, getting to know you over the year and whatnot through social media. But, I guess we're kind of on Babcock right now. I'd love to know your initial thoughts on the Oilers trying to hire Mike Babcock and bring him back to the NHL. And then we can go into the player empowerment and whatnot, because I know you definitely want to discuss that.
Yeah, I think it's always a decent rule to just be biased towards maybe giving younger first-timer, proven at other level coaches their first shot rather than maybe going back into the older retread bin. I think I have a buddy who's a GM, and he always says when hiring a coach, sort of the biggest hurdle is making sure you don't make a terribly wrong hire as opposed to the right hire, whether that's sort of in play here or not. One or the other, but it's a high risk move.
Yeah, we've kind of gone through this, and I'm not saying you have to go find a 37-year-old coach, and we've kind of been going at it with some of the people in our chat that are like, they're just the default as well. These players are too soft now, and my biggest pushback was like, players don't mind demanding coaches, and players can even deal with guys who are dickheads. Like, you can deal with it. My whole point with the Babcock situation, Steve, was just that, like, to me, this guy's more of a creep. And, there have been instances where you're being a creep to these guys. You're playing psychological warfare games with these guys. And I felt like the Edmonton Oilers ownership got too involved in this decision, didn't let Stan go out and hire the guy probably, or the best people that he wanted to. And then my issue is now the general manager is going to be the one who has to answer for it if it doesn't work out, even though it probably wasn't his hire. And what was your sort of experience like with that kind of stuff? Like, your relationship, like, with ownership versus hockey ops? Like, I know you've, and maybe even it's not just that. I know you've kind of launched, and been a CEO and a high level executive in the business world outside of hockey. Like, so like, maybe what are the differences in those relationships with shareholders versus owners, and just kind of how that whole thing works out for you in your experience?
Yeah, listen, winning is super hard, right? And you want to win in the NHL or in business or anything else, and you're fighting internal battles, whether it's like, HR fights internally because you have unhappy scouts with their travel schedules, or maybe you have coaches who, don't feel like they don't get a big enough say in personnel. Like, it's hard enough beating 31 other teams. And I think, whether it's been in hockey or elsewhere, when you have that alignment top down, just of people who, like you guys were talking about a minute ago before I jumped on, of like guys who like being in the room together, players who are able to speak their coaches, owners who know when managers sort of need maybe more resources, and maybe when you need to step out of the room and say, hey, go do your thing and let me not slow you down. It's critical, and I've seen it go badly and I've seen it go right. And we've seen that across sports where, bad management can cripple a franchise for years or decades. And then, look at a team like the New York Knicks, where all of a sudden you bring in good management and players who are aligned and get along, and it's transformed. It's everything.
Yeah, I know you're a big Knicks guy, and this run's been incredible. And with that too, like, when we talk about coaches, it's the short shelf life, right? Like, that's kind of been the new wave of NHL coaching. And when you were in Florida, you were there the year that they had or you guys had fired Gallant, right? Like that was the year that you were with the Panthers. Like I feel like, and we were talking about this last week because we had him on our Tri-State show. He was kind of that first coach who really got the 3-year window from team to team. Like he got it in Florida, then in Vegas with New York. Like he was maybe it's kind of a negative, but like the trailblazer or trendsetter for that. I'm curious, like what went into that decision that year, and what that Panthers team has so many interesting characters on it with guys like Ekblad and Huberdeau and Trocheck and Yager. Like it's a crazy team to look at, Luongo. So I'm wondering for you, like how that decision and conversation went at the time.
Yeah, I think we like to write like simple narratives about people and events in hindsight that probably aren't that simple, and sort of paint a coach or manager in a consistent light isn't always right. But just going back to the last point, like I think that team at that time is an example of one where we had, an ownership group who bought a team and maybe inherited a general manager and a management group that they wouldn't have assembled if they sat down with a blank slate and said, if we could do it our way, like we manage our other companies, who would we put in? How would they operate? How would they communicate? And whenever you have that disconnect, it trickles on down. And, you see a lot of that right now in the conversation about a team like Vancouver, right? Where you could say, here's a team that wanted to win last year. They ended up coming dead last. And all they did was they subtracted the guys at the top. And it's tempting to say, like, that's not enough. But it is, I think, because when you have those bottlenecks and you have that disconnect and you have that breakdown in trust and those trust busters, it really flows down, whether that's to coaches, to players, to everything else, and it leads to maybe the issues we're seeing in Detroit and elsewhere, where you end up with players who say, this isn't working for me, and maybe those issues bubble up in weird ways because you don't have that open communication or that synergy and trust. And certainly coming into a team like Florida, where again you have ownership and management and coaches and players who maybe have different interests and histories and philosophies, it's hard to make it all work.
Yeah, what was your experience like leading up to when you took that job in Florida? Like what was your sort of main area of focus, like outside of the game? I mean, I've kind of read about a lot of the things that you've done since, and it's your background. It's funny. There's like, and I saw the name Eric Joyce tagged. Like I think you and Eric Joyce were together in Florida. Somebody that I've had the fortune to get to meet, and he's like similar to you. Like his background is so unique and interesting. And I know a lot of people, they don't even know what he's done in Carolina for the last number of years, because he likes to kind of stay, in the shade and the quiet, but like the lead up and then the after, because I think our chat would really appreciate just like the diversity in your background and the things that you've done.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, Joyce is awesome, and you could say he's the most interesting man in the world. I'm not that interesting, but I'll try to be. I was a lawyer by training, so stereotypical Canadian lawyer. Big hockey fan, sports fan growing up. Went to work in New York at a big corporate law firm for 5 or 6 years, doing corporate law. Represented sort of any sports related deal I could get into, NBA, baseball, whatever. And then 5 years into being a lawyer in New York, one of the partners at my first firm and one of his former clients were looking into buying a team, and they came to me and to Joyce independently, who I didn't know at the time, and said, hey guys, we're looking at buying this hockey team. We need some really young, sort of wide-ranging people to come in with a big range of interests and skills and sort of look at everything for us. Whether it's how we run the hockey team, how we run the business, how we do everything, given sort of the history of that franchise at the time. And so my girlfriend, my now wife, and I at the time moved down from New York to Florida, as did Joyce and his family, and it was an exciting ride. We spent about 5-6 years together, sort of overseeing a bit of everything, and then behind the scenes, and then more formally taking on more hockey ops responsibilities. And obviously for me, that was more cap CVA management, helping build out a R&D group and an analytics team. That was sort of first in its kind back then, and is now maybe more cookie cutter and standard. And we had a really, really fun partnership. We did a lot of interesting things, had some really busy off seasons where we made a lot of moves that I think aged pretty well. And as we often said, we probably spent a lot more time talking to each other than we did to our wives and families over that time, but it was a lot of fun.
What was the biggest challenge for you at the time, like with Florida? Because it felt like this overnight shift with the Panthers, where now they're like the the pedigree of the NHL. So what was it like for you at the time?
It's funny coming in. So coming in, you have that threshold question, right? If you haven't been in hockey ops before, and it's like, is there some magical sauce there? Is there something going on that, having not been in that role, you just don't know? And over time, that question, gets answered. It's like a little bit maybe, but there's also a lot, just thinking logically, and asking smart questions and finding the right people. You can figure out. And I think, in hindsight, Joycey and I both had the same takeaway, which is like, we wish we moved faster. I remember like the summer of, I think, 2016, where we traded for Jared McCann. We signed Jonathan Marchessault. We acquired Mark Pysyk. We moved out some sort of veteran players in that third contract, pre-UFA, about to be $5 or $6 million players, but they aren't going to be $8 or $9 million guys. Should we move them before that happens? And those moves aged really well, and they created a lot of confusion internally and externally at that time. But looking back, I think we're both probably pretty proud of those moves. And, one thing we heard a lot then, especially that offseason from, big insiders and guys around the league, was like, these guys are moving too fast. Or internally, we heard like, this is fantasy hockey. You can't make moves like that. But if you look at the moves Carolina's made the last couple of years, with Joycey and other smart guys there with Eric, they've done it similarly. And if you ask me, like, what's my at least biggest regret from that time, it's that we didn't do more. It's that we didn't sit back like the next summer and say, hey, we grabbed a group 6 UFA who hasn't played enough games, so he's become an unrestricted free agent in Marchessault, who we think is undervalued. Well, we can do that again this summer with Yanni Gourde. And we were sort of like, we've done that before. Like, is it really going to work again? It's like, yeah, it would have. Like, yeah, more moves like that would have actually helped. Like, you can just do things. And you look at the turnover the Hurricanes have had with Telski in the last couple of years. It's like, yeah, you can go grab like 7, 8, or 9 guys who you think there's a massive disconnect between how you value them and how they'll look in your team and elsewhere. And you can be right, even if everyone thinks you're wrong. But that takeaway of coming in and thinking like, what do we not know? And then on the back end thinking, we should have done more. Like, there is so much opportunity if you're willing to be bold, risky, and different. That was a really neat lesson. I think that applies, in hockey, but a lot of other areas too.
Yeah, I that's interesting to hear, and all the movement and all those decisions and bringing guys in, moving guys out, it kind of leads us perfectly to what everybody was sparring about yesterday on social media, and like Drew Shore was chiming in, and those conversations got funny because Shoresy's a funny guy. I know he was probably with the organization when you were, right? Shore, because I played with him in San Antonio when I came back from Europe, and I think those years where you would have been around. But like with this whole Dylan Larkin situation, just kind of talking about player movement and relationships, I think it all kind of runs together. Like, what is your first reaction? Because we've gone in circles, Jonny and I. We don't have that different point of views on the first part of the situation. It's the second part of the situation where our views greatly differ. But like, what are you, you've been a manager and you're in that room when that request comes in, you're in the brain trust, you're in the circle, right? How are you handling that situation? And what do you expect to see Steve Yzerman and the franchise? And like, how do you weigh these things of like our locker room, our captain? Like, can we go into a season with this hanging over our head? Can we give in to the player? Does this hurt us down the road? There are just so many factors that I don't even think anybody really truly thinks about unless you've been in this situation.
Yeah, listen, it's a tough one. And like, there's the first order thinking, and then there's the bigger thoughts. Like the first simple thought is like, well, what do you do with this player in this trade request? And there's a few ways it can go. And like, the big question really is like, is this a question just of hockey decisions, or is it a question of ego and pride? And, you heard Pierre and Elliott both come out and say like, no one put Steve Yzerman in the corner. And so it's interesting, like how Stevie will deal with that. And like in a repeat interaction game, which the NHL management is, where you're dealing with the same managers and like the same pool of players over and over again, it's important how you build and preserve your reputation. So like, listen, this could go a lot of ways. On one hand, Stevie can look at this and say, is this a blessing in disguise? I have a 30-year-old center. He's a first-line center at a time when first-line centers are in massive demand. Maybe looking at Carolina and other teams, I'm going to conclude I'm 2 years away from being 2 years away. There's a bunch of players I need, and I'm going to just make sort of the best I can with these lemons and find the best deal I can make. On the other hand, like, how does this cascade, right? Like, if you've ever owned a cottage and opened it up for a season, you always know, like, there's never only one cockroach. And so if Dylan Larkin's saying, I don't believe in this team, they haven't made the playoffs in 10 years, they haven't made it for the last 7 with the same GM, what's Alex DeBrincat going to say if the number one center leaves and that guy thought the team wasn't good enough? What does he think after that if they end up trading Dylan for futures? So, you have to think about that. And then when it comes to, pride and ego and all that, like, there's a lot of options for Stevie. The first one is, like, how does he deal with the trade request? And is it really, a 3-team list? Is it bigger? How tough are, Dylan's camp and CAA playing with him? And I don't think we necessarily know what's posturing and what's truth right now. What I'm curious about is, like, I always try to think, like, what's the extreme option? What's something we're not thinking about? What's a dog not barking right now? And so, like, to me, the extreme response that Steve would take, and I'm not saying I would take this line, but I'm not saying I wouldn't, is, okay, he doesn't have leverage with Dylan Larkin, but if Dylan Larkin wants to go, maybe Steve comes out and says, listen, this is going to set off a potential organizational reset. If I'm going to lose a first line center, I'm going to need to make a bunch of other moves. And so maybe he leaks out quietly that, maybe I'm taking some calls on Lucas Raymond, who happens, 1, to also be represented by CAA, but 2, only has 1 more season before his no trade kicks in. And if that gets back to Lucas's camp, who's the same as Dylan's camp, like, does that change the calculus on how to play hardball on Dylan? I don't know. Would Steve do that? I don't know. But, there's a lot of ways it could go. I think it's going to play out maybe in a way none of us were totally anticipating yet. Mm-hmm. But it's going to be fascinating. And I think it speaks to that growing trend of player empowerment and players being less willing to, stick around forever if they don't believe in how things are going with their team. And maybe it kicks back to teams doing the same thing where they go in a different direction, even if players have, no trades and no moves.
Jonny, I do find, yeah. I feel like you're going to say the same thing I was.
I want to read the comment in the chat from General Soreness because I think it's an interesting part of this conversation. And it says, do you guys think if Yzerman does not trade Larkin before the season starts, can he remain as the captain? Absolutely not. I don't think you can start the season with him. There is an elephant in the side in your locker room.
I don't think he plays another game in that jersey.
I agree. There's no way, shape, or form that you can let this thing drag to the beginning of the season, especially with a team that the heat is on. I mean, like, this team has not made it in a while. Steve Yzerman, his seat should be warm. It should be. Like, they need to take the next step.
Even if Larkin didn't do this, it should be warm.
This does not take the next step. You can't let this thing drag out. And that's where the people in the camp, Steve, that are saying nobody tells Steve Yzerman what to do. I just don't think Steve also has to run an intelligent business here, and dragging this thing to September is not running an intelligent business. He knows what locker room chemistry means. He knows about that stuff. He was the captain of one of the greatest, most iconic runs of with groups of hockey players we've ever seen in Detroit. He knows that. So just to address that comment, and I'll let you guys obviously chime in as well here, but I don't think there's any way he could be captain. I don't think there's any way he can be in training camp under any circumstance.
I agree fully. I wanted to point out what Steve said, though, about playing hardball with Lucas Raymond, even just because they're under the same representation. Like, that's a tactic that I wouldn't think of. I don't know if anyone even really would think of that, but that's like a really interesting thing that you said. Like, if they want to go play hardball, if Dylan Larkin wants to play hardball, why not play hardball right back with other clients that they have at CAA? You know what I mean? Like, but I the only thing with that, though, Steve,
really
that I'll push back on
with Pat Brisson, Jonny.
Well, no, but I don't think the Red Wings are in any position.
Steve says no. You've dealt with Pat Brisson, I assume.
But I don't think they're in a position to delay this even more. Like, I think the Red Wings need to try to remain competitive and make the playoffs next year. Like, this should be a big F you to Larkin that, like, we didn't need you to make the playoffs, instead of like a total reset.
Yeah, I mean,
listen, I think you do, maybe not play hardball like that extreme scenario, but you do need to stand your ground to some point, because again, like, if you don't with Dylan, what happens next, and you have to sort of plan ahead. And I agree with everything Colby said. Like, you're not probably letting him come back in and be captain and sort of not provide not penalty is the wrong word, but you don't want to incentivize that kind of behavior, especially a player in that stature. And like, it's a very unique case on both sides. Like he's a Michigan guy. He's grown up there. He's the team captain. He's the face of the franchise. It's not just, hey, this guy wanted to move because his significant other had a reason to be elsewhere, or he wants to be closer. It's a pretty big indictment, honestly, of, rightly or wrongly, at least in Dylan's view, of the team and where it's been and where it's going. And that's why I think Steve's going to take probably a pretty hardline stance here, as opposed to us hearing like, hey, he's flipped him to Vegas for a first conditional, whatever. I think he will draw it out, whether that goes into training camp or longer. I don't know. And sort of what are the ramifications if he goes that far and there's sort of a step back either in his usage or whether he's even in the lineup at all. It's tough, but like, I don't hate what Dylan did as a principle, because I think like if we set up the system to reward good management and penalize bad management in the long run, that's good for the league. And we already have this system set up where like a team that tries to win and loses gets rewarded with like the best young prospect in the game and the rights to that player for 8 years. And we don't necessarily want that. Like, it's not the worst thing to say like, hey, if you mismanage your team, there's going to be some significant negative side effects. And you're not just going to be able to say, hey, we have, Shorzy or Demers or whoever we have for the next 8 years, we can fix it. It's, you make a really bad deadline decision for 1 or 2 bad seasons, there's going to be costs. And like short run, that might have some bad medicine, like losing a player you don't want to lose. But long run, that might be good for the team and the fan base and even the ownerships who are, forced into making some tough decisions they might otherwise not.
Well, I also wonder if there was a conversation like it's Yzerman or me, right? Like maybe there's like an exit meeting or something along the lines of like, I need to see a change. This guy hasn't done good enough. Like I've spoken out about how I wish, our management would have done more and gotten us more help. And, maybe if Yzerman gets fired, Larkin's not requesting a trade. But if, Yzerman's sticking around, you know what I mean? Because I keep seeing that Yzerman traded away his best friend in Bertuzzi, and that's what started this whole thing. But is that ever a scenario where like it's a GM or like, do you feel that ever? I don't know if there's another instance that's comparable.
I haven't
Heard it. It sounds a little off-ish. You also think like, well, okay, who would they bring in if it's just like, I don't jive with this GM? Okay, well, we brought in like, someone you also might not love. I don't know. That sounds a little bit off. I think it's probably a bit more of, hey, I'm 30
I'm just thinking too deep there, maybe.
Like careers. Yeah, like careers are short. I want to win. Like past his prologue, I don't see the light at the end of this tunnel. And, I just got a taste of winning again in the Olympics. I liked it and so on and so on. I don't know. Again, like there's a lot we don't know and, we won't necessarily ever know it.
That's such an important part. And we should highlight that part, is that there's so much we don't know. Okay. There's so many conversations that have been had that we are not privy to. There's meetings that we've heard rumors about. We've seen Dylan Larkin come out and be critical. We don't know what the follow-up on that was. We don't know if they sat down. There's so much in this that we don't know who's leaking this stuff. We have no idea who leaked the 3 teams. We don't know who leaked the trade request. Neither of those things help this thing move forward. They don't help the Red Wings. They don't help Dylan Larkin's camp, in my opinion. I could make the argument that it makes this a lot harder with how public this now has become. In a way, I could also make the argument that now your hand is forced to act quicker because it's all. So I could seriously sit here and argue, shocker, with myself on this, probably with my left hand and my right hand, no problem. But that is the key that I want to key on what you just said, Steve, is that there's so much information that we are not privy to. And Steve Yzerman does not have a big circle. He's got a small circle, as we know. Okay. And Dylan Larkin has been around. He's not a gossip queen type of guy. It's not his MO. So we don't know. We have the extreme left and the extreme right, and we don't know anything about what's happening in between those two. And I think that is a factor that will, because like, listen, we think those are the 3 teams, but like, what if Steve Yzerman goes to him tomorrow and says, we have a great deal on the table for you to go to Tampa Bay? Is he going to turn an opportunity down to go play with Point and Kucherov and Hedman and Vasilevsky and have a team that's going to go all in to win every year? No, I doubt that. I highly doubt that. That's where I'm not getting as hung up on this whole list thing that other people are getting hung up on. He can say and do what he wants. At the end of the day, both sides will have to agree. Oh, yeah, right. Both sides will have to agree.
Yeah, no, I'm with you.
And like having been on the inside, like the amount of media posturing and sort of smoke that goes on in situations like this, like it can't be understated. That's a good leverage move a lot of people would make in Steve's position. It sort of changed the narrative in a minute of saying, wow, like you want out and you only want to go to these 3 places. And it's the classic, like, okay, you're asking me for a trade list, so I'm going to put on all the teams I know can't trade for me so I can go to the place I want to go. That stuff happens, and it happens a lot. And even, like you mentioned, these aren't 2 parties who are known for those type of tactics. When it gets to stakes this high, it happens. And there's always like, guys 1 or 2 degrees removed, but with a strong interest in sort of the happiness of each of their whatever, friends or colleagues who start playing the media game. And so, it'll take some time to really know what's going on there.
Yeah. Well, Steve, we really appreciate your insight this morning. Thank you so much. And we'll be on the lookout for your social media. I know you're chiming in on all these conversations. So thanks again. Really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Be good. Colby, one more thing I just wanted to get to because I was just reminded of it quickly before we bring Tyler on. I did see a tweet yesterday involving Puckpedia. Michael Zeta tweeted, or Zeta said, technically speaking, because Larkin has a no trade clause and not a no move clause, he could still go through waivers. Therefore, Yzerman can make a deal with the top team on the waiver list and just waive him. Puckpedia, please let me know if I am incorrect. And Puckpedia confirmed, correct, he can go on waivers. So imagine like it gets that cutthroat where there's something to bend around the rules here.
But so that would so at that point we're saying
there'd be an agreement.
They let him go for nothing.
Well, I feel like you'd have some sort of like trade that like
okay, so spell it out for me
or something.
So what? A month later, you make a trade and you send a huge haul of players for nothing. Back?
Not a huge haul, but something. Not a huge haul. Yeah.
I'm just so theoretically. Whoever's last, let's just say it's Chicago. Here's the deal: Chicago's going to claim him.
Well, no, it'd be Vancouver. It'd be Vancouver.
Okay, Vancouver, whatever. I'm saying hypothetically. Yeah. So then in a month from now, Vancouver trades a first round pick, a high end player, and a third asset for future considerations.
I'm just saying there could be like some sort of under the table agreement where
but how does that play out without the league? But how does that play out? Because the return
it's a loophole
for Larkin isn't nothing. It is, but it isn't. It's like it's not, because the league would get involved in this, Johnny, because then they would turn around and they would reject.
But Barclay Goodrow had a no move. The Rangers moved him for a cap dump. That was a cap dump.
That was a cap dump. There was nothing that came back on that. Okay. That is a hypothetical situation that.
So wait, let's bring Tyler in. Let's bring Tyler in because Tyler's texting us here on the side saying that almost happened with Jacob Trouba, which made him expand his list. So Tyler, why don't you give us your thoughts on that quickly? And good morning. Great to see you.
Did that right?
What a beautiful background.
Yeah, thanks. The arena's behind me somewhere. I don't know. I'm really tired.
Where are you staying?
Aren't working really well. Park MGM.
Oh, that's where we stayed for the Frozen Four.
Yeah. Yeah. Look at that background. That's sick. But I just feel like if it gets that ugly, this could happen.
I don't think so.
Jacob Trouba, remember the rumor at the time? And I hope I'm remembering this correctly. I think I am. It was Columbus, right? And they had a whole deal.
I think it was Detroit, actually. I think it was Detroit.
Okay, yeah, whoever it was. But like they had a whole deal worked out and again, that was different because Jacob Trouba was such an ugly contract at that time that they were pretty confident that a bunch of teams lower in the standings probably weren't going to claim him. But I don't know. I get where you're coming from, Laz, and it could it could happen and work, and the league can't really stop it. But I just don't think Vancouver of all teams is going to be like, sure, we want
Tyler,
Larkin.
It's not that the league would stop it. It's they would stop whatever the compensation that came back was. Unless you're letting him go for nothing, which is what waivers is, okay? What Johnny's saying is they would have some sort of gentleman's agreement and they would make a trade later. You said
separately, a separate trade, right? Like a separate trade.
The league would step in here, Tyler, is they'd be like, well, wait a second. You're now going to trade 3 first-round picks for future considerations with the Vancouver Canucks a month later. The league would never allow that. That is circumvention.
The league was about to allow it with Columbus, Colby, or with whatever was happening with Trouba. They were going to allow it, and they allowed it with Barclay Goodrow.
Yeah, but did Barclay Goodrow, he got waived, but
he had
there
a
was
no move.
What was the trade compensation that came back?
I don't think there was anything that came back, but he had a no move.
So we're
I'll have
saying,
to look it up. I don't remember the
hold
exact
on a
detail.
second. Hold on a sec. So we're saying this would not be illegal as if there was no trade that preceded it. It was just a waive. Your waivers, you're going to Vancouver. We're done. You're claimed. There couldn't then be a follow-up trade to that, Tyler.
Yeah, I mean, if Vancouver and Detroit want to make a trade where Detroit's trading Michael Rasmussen for 3 first-round picks, and both GMs just look at each other and go like, "Ooh."
You do know that the league. You do know that the league has to approve. You know that the league has to approve every trade. They approve every trade. You think they would approve something like that, and full well knowing what just happened? It's different than when there's no trade that comes back the other way.
So here's just the situation. Gaudreau had the Sharks on his 15-team no-trade list. It was a modified no-trade, so they used waivers to bypass his no-trade clause.
And then was there a trade after that, though, Jonny?
There was no trade. There was no trade. It was a strict cap dump.
But the PA might be kind of pissed about this. Why would the league care?
Because
it's not cap circumvention.
The PA was pissed about Gaudreau too.
This would be an issue with the league and with the players 100%. This couldn't, unless you're just giving him up for nothing. But if you're doing that and wink, wink, we already have an agreement for 3 first-round picks and we're going to execute it in 30 days and it's for future considerations or it's for a prospect or something like that. And listen, I'm telling you I'm not saying I'm telling you a fact. I'm just telling you my opinion on the situation. But this is where we need to find a guest, Jonny, somebody that would either from I don't believe that situation would pass the smell test, and I believe the league would step in. The league and the PA would both step in and have a major, major issue. If you put him on waivers and you let him go to Vancouver for nothing, that they can't do anything about.
Well, that's never going to happen. Yeah, that's never going to happen.
But that's where I'm saying
that's never going to happen either.
Yeah, that's probably never going to happen either. I just found it interesting, though. I found it interesting as a loophole.
Yeah, I don't think it's really a loophole because I don't think unless you're letting him go for nothing at that point. That's just a cap dump. That you can do.
Yeah. All right, let's talk to Tyler about Peter Laviolette because we all know that's why we brought him on here. Just kidding. Let's talk about Vegas first. We'll get into the Babcock stuff later. Your just initial, you were at that game the other night. Like, how crazy was that environment, the experience, and just your overall thoughts on the series and how they've maybe shifted from period to period?
Yeah, it's been kind of wild. Like, there'll be a 5-minute run where, and this happened in game 3 where I'm sitting there and I'm like, Carolina's taking it to them. Like, what did Vegas have 3 shots in the first 25 minutes of that hockey game or something? And I'm like, well, Carolina's showing that, like, they're the better. And then, like, it flips and they score Vegas, that is, scores the 1 goal that was obviously called back because of offside. And that one was really close. And the goalie interference goal, that was the right call. John Tortorella will tell you that was the right call, but it was like, Vegas gets those 2, and like, man, they end up scoring 4 straight after that. And like, even the offside goal, I know it's technically offside because it's offside by like a whisker, but like the puck still went in. They still created a scoring chance and won the game. So like, I don't know, it's just insane that Vegas, when Vegas gets dominant, they're able to just rattle off these goals and take over the game in such an insane way. And like, even when you look at it the other way in Carolina's comeback, like, yeah, Carolina scored a bunch of goals really quick, but like, Vegas was able to get their game back on the rails in relatively short order and not totally collapse. And the overtime was back and forth, but that's just kind of what's been, I guess, most surprising to me. The amount of goals and the way they're coming in these stretches where each team will just take over for 20 minutes and the other team takes over for 5, and then the other team's back in control and it looks like they're going to win. Like, it's just been insane.
As a guy who's very well versed, Tyler, in goaltending situations in long playoff runs, who are the Carolina Hurricanes going to start in goal tonight? And do you agree with the decision that they're going to make?
I I kind of don't believe that Freddie Andersen has a maintenance day. I mean, he got smoked in the head and then grabbed his head and then gave up a bunch of goals in a row that he usually doesn't give up. Like that Mitch Marner slap shot, Freddie Andersen's been playing better than allowing something like that in these playoffs. So I'm not totally convinced it was a maintenance day. My first thought when Andersen didn't come onto the ice for practice was, they had a day off yesterday. Remember that. No travel, 2 straight days off, and you're giving him a maintenance day. That raised alarm bells for me. But honestly, even if Andersen was healthy, I'd be going with Brandon Bussey. I think he gave you a really, really quality appearance. He gave you a chance to win that hockey game in a game that Freddie Andersen didn't play well in. Freddie Andersen's had to, play a decent amount of hockey in these playoffs. I would just sit there and go, you know what? We can go Bussey for this one. And if he sparks our group at all, let's go. It's 2-2 going back to Carolina. We have home ice back. If Bussey doesn't work out for you, then it's 3-1. That obviously sucks, but at least you can point back to Freddie and go, okay, our season's on the line. We're going back to our guy. That's exactly what the Oilers would do in the last couple of runs, right? They would never play Calvin Pickard in like elimination games, or at least it didn't happen all that often. But if they were down 2-1 and they needed a spark, hell yeah, they'd throw him in there for a game or two, and then they'd go back to Stu. That's what Carolina should do.
And you know the rule, if it's 3-1, it's really 3-2 because it's going back home to, or no, actually it'd be the opposite because it's going on the road. So the series would be over. If it was 3-1 going back to Vegas, Carolina obviously wins on the road in game 5 because that closeout game in game 5, we all know is impossible. But what have you made of Rod? I guess Rod was having fun with it yesterday, right? By not sharing. He said, we know who our starter is, but he's not going to tell the media. I wonder if he's told the players though, because Brandon Bussey, I don't know if you were in the locker room for that, Tyler, but Bussey said, you guys know Rod's the head coach, right? Like Bussey didn't seem like he knew if he was playing, or maybe he was told he can't share. So what do you think Rod's, I guess, doing with his own guys from what you've learned just about Rod and being in the room with him?
If you're giving Brandon Bussey his first ever Stanley Cup Final start, I think it'd be right. I think it'd be his first ever playoff start.
Yeah.
Yep. I would imagine you tell him. I would imagine you don't go like, I don't know, wait till warm-ups, Brandon. Maybe you're playing. Like, who knows? Like, you want to give that guy as much time to prepare. And also to go back to the first part of my, I'm calling it an educated theory on Freddie Andersen. Frederick Andersen has a concussion or not. Because Andersen, I did find it kind of interesting. He didn't come back to the bench at all in that game in Vegas. And like, again, if you get pulled and you don't come back for the first 10 minutes of the third period because you're pissed and you're cooling off, or like, sure. But like, he didn't come back through 2 overtimes, like 2 intermissions, like 3 intermissions, I guess. Like, again, it's just very telling to me that like he didn't come back on the bench. Obviously, they practiced yesterday. He's not on the ice. Like, that's a lot of time to like not be in the mix, to take a full day off and then not practice the next day. I think they know in that room, and Bussey and everyone's just, doing what teams do in the playoffs.
What about from a line standpoint? We've seen Rod kind of go to the blender here. It's sort of, I think it was game 3. No, I guess it would have been game 2. He went to the blender for a little bit. He's kind of, then he's
just Martin Jarvis.
He's kind of gone back to some other things. Like, they obviously have had both teams have really had some injuries in their lineups. Guys have been leaving the bench for periods of time. Do you think we see the forward group in Carolina tonight, Tyler, back to, what we've seen for the most part? Or do you think after the loss, the offense maybe is going a little bit more now? They got 4 the other night. Do you think he'll kind of go back to some of those tweaks, or do we expect to see Aho, Arvis? Wow, I'm really on this one. Svechnikov, Jarvis, and Aho, and then sort of the way that we've seen these things.
I just think the tough part with that is, again, as much as you want, and quite frankly, you probably do need Aho and Svechnikov to get going at some point here. Although Aho made a beautiful, beautiful pass to Taylor Hall.
Yeah, that was sick.
Better. The last 2 games, I think those 2 guys have been better.
And like, as much as you maybe want to spark them by shaking it up, and I know Rod did that for a little bit, the other problem is Martinook, Ehlers, and Stahl has borderline been like their best line. So like, they're handling the Eichel assignment. They're winning. Stahl is murdering him in the face-off dot, and they're hammering them in the possession game. Like, if you're Rod and you're like, oh, I really want Aho and Svechnikov to get going, can you really jumble your lines in the name of getting those guys going if it also means you're breaking up what's potentially been your best line at 5-on-5? Like, to me, you can't do that.
No, definitely not. I actually have a crazy Jordan Stahl stat from my friend Ben. He said Jordan Stahl can become the first player with a 4-game goal streak to open the Stanley Cup Final since Mike Bossy in 1982 against the Canucks. Isn't that pretty like how good? It's a problem that Jordan Stahl has been the Canes' best player, but how good has Jordan Stahl been?
Yeah, so I had that take yesterday when we were doing a whole debate about like, hey, has Mitch Marner won the Conn Smythe no matter what? Like, is he going to do what McDavid did a couple years? So there's no path for you if Carolina comes back and wins this series where we look at a series where Jordan Stahl, because I know Marner, 28 points in the playoffs. That is unbelievable. That's a lot of points. That's, again, like McDavid-esque production that Marner's having, and he had his big moment in Game 3. But if we sit here and look at the end of the series, and I think voters do typically weigh the Stanley Cup Finals heavier than the other 3 rounds, if Jordan Stahl has a game winner later in this series, I mean, if he has a game winner later in the series,
Tyler, I'm with you. Tyler, I'm with you here. I think whether it's him, whether Stankoven has a good couple of games in a row here, and
Stankoven, I can get behind.
I could see if Taylor Hall starts finding the back of the net for the next couple. I mean, listen, Carolina's got to win 3 more hockey games. There's a lot that can be done over the course of those 3 games, in my opinion, to sway voters. And I agree with Tyler. I think there's a bias in the finals, and I do not think if Carolina wins, it's a guarantee that Mitch Marner gets the Conn Smythe Trophy. I do not believe that to be a guarantee.
But with Stahl, it's not like he's like,
I got half my damn takeout before you both cut me off.
Well, sorry, that's what we do on the show. But continue and finish.
I was just gonna say, like, he's shutting down Eichel, and like Jack Eichel's had a pretty poor Stanley Cup Final, and a big reason for that is because Jordan Stahl has been a pain in his ass to play against.
Poor.
He's got 2 points. He's like 30%.
Yeah, but he hasn't done enough offensively. And honestly, I think Jack has spent too much time on the outside. I really do. I don't think he's getting into the middle quite enough. I also think that I've seen too many.
I think he's been pretty damn good in the power play.
I think there's been, how many power play goals has Vegas scored? What in the finals, Johnny? I mean, a couple, not a
big one. Hurdle had the big one.
I know he makes a great pass.
He made the great play to Barbashev.
I think Eichel has been great off the puck, but I think with the puck, whether he's injured, whether he's not, but I don't think he's been as good as he needs to be for Vegas. Like, I thought he should have won the Conn Smythe last time they won. I didn't think Marchessault should have won it. I thought Jack should have won it. This time, obviously, I don't believe that to be true.
Yeah, again, I just think my bars may be higher for players like that. Like, he is a superstar centerman. If we are going to label Jack as, a franchise caliber player, a franchise level center, then like he should be better than he's been in this series. I don't think that's an unfair thing to say about him.
I don't either.
Mm-hmm. No,
I don't either.
No,
he is those things though, Tyler. We're not labeling, like, we're not reaching on the label. He is. I mean, I think he's going to win his second Stanley Cup. He won a gold medal this year. Down the middle, I think his contributions do go further than the score sheet, more than some of the other top end centers that we generally do compare him to. But I don't think you're wrong in the fact that you want more out of that guy. Like, I think that's totally fair and fine, as we've talked about with goaltenders, as we've talked about with other high-level players. This is the finals. If you want to win, bring your A game. Look at Marner. He's elevated. He's a big reason why they are where they are. And having high standards this time of year is what makes you a champion. So I as somebody who is the first one over the bridge talking about how good Jack Eichel is, or over the wall taking bullets for making comparisons to the other 2 guys that are the centers that we, put up there as the greats right now. I do think it's fine to say you want more from him, because I am with you on that and would like to see more from him as well.
Yeah, I just think if a lot of those other top centers had 2 assists through 3 games in the Stanley Cup Final, even if their team was up 2-1, we'd be asking these questions.
Yeah, that's fair. All right, let's go into the Babcock situation. We've waited long enough here. What were your initial thoughts when you heard the report yesterday that Babcock is reportedly going to be the head coach of the Edmonton Oilers?
My first thought is, like, why? They have this obsession with, like, and apparently this comes from the top in ownership, that you need a coach, you hire a coach who's won a Stanley Cup before. okay, I don't know what winning a Stanley Cup in 2008 with a team where half the roster was Hall of Famers, like, I don't know if that necessarily tells you that the guy's a great coach. I'm not sure if like winning Olympic gold medals with these rosters that are full of Hall of Famers like says a ton about a coach. I know that he hasn't won a playoff series since 2 years before Connor McDavid was drafted. I know the last time he got a job, even though he sold everybody during the interview process, he took him a month to be doing the usual Mike Babcock kind of bullshit. So I just don't get it. But I will say the one area where I'll try to stop a bit of a narrative here is the people who are like, you're giving McDavid his walking papers if you hire Mike Babcock. If Connor McDavid's going to sign on for this, then for me, because I am someone who believes like if this next season goes poorly and if the coach hiring isn't good and all that, like Connor McDavid could absolutely ask for a trade next summer. I think that is very much a possibility and very much in the cards. I'll say this. If you're Connor McDavid and you're signing off on Mike Babcock coming here on a 2 or 3 year deal, then you're here, dog. You can't go after one season and say, ooh, this Mike Babcock thing kind of sucks when you're the one who signed off on it and you could have stopped it. So it's a massive risk. I mean, is it maybe considered a high upside move? Like, I guess I view it just more as a pure risk, and the risk all comes on the downside. I'm not sure how much upside there is to hiring Mike Babcock. So I don't know why this organization does this. I don't know why they think the way that they do. I think this would be a poor hire. I don't think he's a great coach, and that's my take.
Yeah, and it's the penis trend, right? Isn't the coach's last name with the penis thing in it for the last like the last five coaches? Yeah. Woodcroft, Knobloch, like Hitchcock. Babcock, who's that one?
I have not seen this, and
you haven't seen that?
Surprised that you're heated on this, Johnny. Nothing surprising about the fact that you're drawing on to this whole thing. To me, Tyler, it just reeks of desperation. The only thing I'll say, like, I'm not gonna sit here and say Mike Babcock's not a good hockey coach, like just as just black and white, like just because he won in 08.
Toronto.
Just because he won in 08, like just because it was so long ago, you still have experience that you can draw on. So if you get to the moments and you're in the finals or you're in the conference finals and things come up, you're still going to have that experience you can draw on. So like, I'm not going to poo-poo the fact that he hasn't won since 08. So that's the one part where I disagree with you on, but I think that when ownership says you have to check these 3 boxes and you can't talk to anybody else, I just think that that's a problem, because I think you're limiting and you're not necessarily looking for the best candidate at that point. You're trying to fit maybe a round peg into a square hole type of situation. And I get it. They ownership wanted Knobloch out. Maybe that's where the whole leak came from on this whole thing. Like, who knows? Who knows how this whole thing is played out? I don't think it's good that you're seeing ownership is the one maybe doing the interview or heavily involved in the interview process. I don't think that's a good thing. You hired a GM. If you don't trust him to do his job, find somebody you do trust. If you're going to micromanage him, because now what? You're going to point fingers at him if the Babcock thing doesn't work out, and then everybody's going to be calling for Stan's head. I don't think that's right. I think that's the way it works, but I don't think that's right. It just this thing smells desperate to me. You couldn't get Cassidy, and so now you've in my opinion, you've sort of panicked. I just think this move, when you bring a guy in, it's not that he's hard-nosed, it's not that he's demanding, it's all the other stuff. It's all the other stuff for me. That's the issue that I see with this whole thing, Tyler. It's like, why are you bringing that into your dressing room? I can't figure that out.
And for anyone who thinks maybe he's changed or whatever, I mean, Colby, you know this, but like I spent the last 9 seasons calling University of Alberta games. They're in the same conference as the University of Saskatchewan, where Mike Babcock was hanging out the last number of years. What kind of stories do you think I've been hearing? Not good ones.
Sure, of course. You are who you are, man. There's no way. You're getting you're getting the full Mike Babcock experience. I'm not saying he's coming in day one and telling Connor to let me see your text messages, but you're still going to get the Mike Babcock experience. Like the stuff we've heard about the way he pitted players against each other, you're getting that. That's what you're going to get. And so, man, I hope it works, because this playoffs has really sucked without having the Edmonton Oilers to talk about, in any real manner. And so I hope this works, but boy, do I think this is a big mistake. I do. I think this is a huge mistake by the Edmonton Oilers. I'll go on the record saying, like, I don't foresee them winning with Mike Babcock. I think this team will come apart before they come together with Mike Babcock.
And I agree with you on that. And I think where they just put themselves in a really unfortunate spot was the whole risk of trying to get to Bruce Cassidy when you weren't 100% sure you were going to get permission. And then you had to fire Chris Knobloch. And I said at the time, I was like, if this ends with them hiring Bruce Cassidy, then it's a win. But they were trying to have their cake and eat it too, because I believe Bruce Cassidy was the best coach on the market. And I believe Chris Knobloch was the second best option out there. Been to back-to-back Stanley Cup finals, had proven he could do it with his team.
Yeah.
Like, it was a risk, and it's blown up in their face hilariously.
Not only, well, I was gonna say, not only will it, could it go poorly, but I think it could actually tear things apart quicker, right? Like, I think that's what I'm hearing from you, Tyler, as far as the risk goes. Like, this thing could be ugly by November, right? Like, Mike Babcock didn't even make it to a game in his last job. Like, imagine what training camp's going to be like and all those things too with this team. I don't know.
Again, these players, I better not hear one, because last year we had all the snarky comments and whatever about, after the last cup final, we're banging our head against a wall and Leon called out coaching twice. And it's like, you know what? If you guys sat down with Mike Babcock as the players and as the leadership group of this team and said, yeah, this is the guy we want, better not hear any of that bullshit next year, and better not have to sit through another boring ass regular season where this team goes, oh, we know when to turn it on, because Babcock is not going to deal with that shit. So, I mean, I hope these players know what they signed up for, and I just better not, like, again, a year from now, if this blows up in their face and we hear that, oh, Babcock wasn't good, blah, 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 the Oilers knew who they were dancing with. The Oilers players knew who they were dancing with. And I think it totally kills Connor McDavid. Like, he could obviously still ask for a trade a year from now. I just think it is a brutal look on his part if he asks for a trade and it has anything to do with, well, the coaching wasn't great last year. Like, you picked him. This is your guy. You wanted him.
Do you think they actually sat down with Babcock? Like, you think they were that involved? Like, that they would have been part of the interview process? Or you think Stan sat down with them and talked to them about the decision?
I'm led to believe they had a Zoom call with the players and Mike Babcock.
Got it. And do you know which players would have been on that? Is it the Draisaitl, McDavid, Hyman? I guess Nurse wouldn't be on that call at this point, but those three guys, Bouchard, maybe 4 guys.
Yeah, I don't know the full list, but I think there was a good group of players. Yeah, like, I mean, Nuge just played for 9 million head coaches, so I'm sure he'd have some pretty good insight.
That stat was crazy. What was it? Like 8 coaches in 10 years or something like that? Or
I think it's 11 if you count the interns.
11? Yeah, geez,
it's
that's
something
insane.
stupid like that, yeah.
What do you make of the smoke
Hyman...
about... Go, finish. I was going to change topics into Sebastian Costa, so if you want to finish.
Go ahead.
About Hyman. I was just going to ask you, Tyler, what you've made of the smoke about Sebastian Costa, because we got Zachary82 in our chat constantly asking. I know I've just seen a couple rumors on Twitter, but I haven't seen anything pretty crazy about it.
Yeah, there's this like weird subset of people in Edmonton. I don't mean to call them weird. I just think it's like kind of a uniquely like large market thing where like there's just these fans on Twitter who are kind of well connected and like nail stuff sometimes, and they're a lot of the ones who are saying like, oh yeah, this Costa thing to Edmonton is happening. And again, like, I'm not saying that disparagingly. Like, I think it's awesome that there's fans who like have connections in the organization. Like, yeah, I'm gonna start a Twitter account and start tweeting this stuff out. But I will also say you need to throw caution when it's those kinds of reports, right? We haven't heard a legit insider come out and say that, you know, this is close or it might happen. Do I like the idea of acquiring Sebastian Costa? Yeah, he's a former first-round pick. He had a really good year in the American League. And despite what Red Wings fans say, this shouldn't cost you all that much. Like, goalies like this usually don't go for an arm and a leg. Like, Yaroslav Askarov was I think a little bit of a different case just because he was painted as like such a lock to be like the next kind of guy in the goalie world. And I don't think there's that kind of hype or smoke with a Sebastian Cossa, but like the Oilers have been hunting for their goalie of the future for a while. They thought it'd be Stuart Skinner. It wasn't. They took a gamble on Tristan Jarry. That was stupid. But like Cossa to me seems like a really good bet. I just don't think he's a good bet to play with Tristan Jarry. I think that's where I'm like, what's going to happen? Like, Kosa's never played a season in the NHL. Has a couple of games or whatever it is. Like, I get worried that when Tristan Jarry inevitably gets hurt or goes on his month-and-a-half run of being generally dog shit, are you okay turning to a kid like Sebastian Kosa and being like, all right, man, you got to start for the next like 6 weeks, like have fun. Like, I just don't, I like him as a future plan. I like him as a future plan, but I don't love him in with Jarry, because I think it's a duo that you can't go on a playoff run with. So I would like to see some way for them to, if they're doing the Kosa thing, to get out of the Jarry deal, even if you have to keep 50%, and then go sign a Connor Ingram in free agency with the money you saved.
He's played one game in his career, one NHL game, and it was 24-25. So yeah, it's, man, they just keep doing things that everyone keeps questioning. I got nothing else. Oilers, Colby, I don't know if you have anything else about tonight, what to look for, what to expect, or just what your plan is for today, Tyler. What do you got going on the rest of the day?
Yeah, more interested in that.
Today? Yeah, DFO Live coming up in about 2.5 hours. Yep, got my time. So no, 1.5 hours. Time zones, Jesus. So I'm doing Daily Faceoff Live. Carter Hutton, Dave Pagnotta, talk about the Cup Final, talk about Babcock, all of that stuff. Talk a little bit about the Dylan Larkin situation too, which you guys did a great job of covering earlier. And then I'm going to head down to the rink, cover practice. They're doing the top prospect media avail. So, Kid,
nice.
Ultra, all of those guys are going to be there. So we got that going on, and then game day puck drops at 5:00 here. So like your day kind of flies by.
Yeah, that's awesome that it's so early for you. Are both teams skating today or no?
Yeah, I believe both teams
Optional?
are skating. Honestly, I woke up and came right into this, so I really haven't checked my email. Let's see. Yep, Golden Knights pregame media availability, optional skate for the Golden Knights in an hour, and then the Canes skate at. No, the Canes aren't skating today. Never mind, I'm wrong. Ignore me.
Johnny and I did a week of Morning Cuppa Hockey from Vegas, so those
brutal.
5 a.m. wake ups are brutal,
Yeah.
especially when you're going out to dinner and bouncing around a little bit the night before. So
4 hours of sleep.
We gave you the 10 a.m. slot today, so we could try to get you to at least 6:50, 6:55 before the alarm clock went off, Tyler. So, as always, man, we love you. We appreciate you. Enjoy the game. So glad that Amo called in the big dogs to actually cover the western part of this series, since, when they've been in Carolina, there's been a little bit of lacking coverage. So good to see you, and we appreciate the work you do for the channel, and we will be on the lookout for the rest of your shows throughout today.
I'm sure even Amo would tell you that I haven't been giving Jonny Lazarus level of coverage in this Stanley Cup Final. So don't be too mean to Jonny.
No, you've been crushing. You've been crushing. I appreciate it though. Thank you. Enjoy the game today, Tyler. Hopefully it's as crazy as the last one. I mean, what a start to this series it's been. But we'll let you go. So have a good one.
Okay.
Thanks as always.
Boys. Yep.
All right. So no Carolina skate, so we won't find out who's starting in net for them until they take the ice for warm up. That's going to be fun. Anything else, I guess, just about tonight? I think I don't want to say it's must win yet, but like it does feel that way, right? For Carolina. It's going to be hard to beat Vegas 3 in a row if they drop this.
Yeah, I don't, you're still, Carolina still gets to go home. Remember, after this, let's say they
that's
go
why
home
that's why I don't hate it. Yeah,
they went on home ice 3-2, and then the pressure goes back to Vegas closing out at home. So no, listen, I think, again, I will continue to say this. I think this series goes the distance, and I still think there's a lot of back and forth to be had. And I still think we're going to be treated to more surprises throughout this series. I really do, because this series has looked nothing like we did. Remember, I was worried about the ratings. The TV ratings have bone good. Listen, you'd love to see it at 10 million, but they're hovering around 5 million in the U.S. ratings, which is pretty good. So I'm just looking at some of the comments in the chat. Official Nickel City Grunge says, does Bruce Cassidy get a ring if they win? It's an interesting comment. Like, I would think he gets a ring, and I wouldn't be shocked if his name went on the cup. I really wouldn't. I mean, Vegas is going to do what Vegas wants to do.
70 games.
But And when you look at the but I guess the thing is, Johnny, like if a player played,
like 40,
up to
right?
the trade
Or one game in the
deadline
final,
and then got traded, would their name go on the cup? No. So
I thought it does.
I don't think so. If you get traded at the trade deadline and your team goes
I think
on
if
to
you
win the
play,
Stanley Cup,
I think if you play 40 games or something like that, it does.
So here's the thing. I don't think that it's I don't think that it's necessary, and I could be wrong. You should look into this, but I'm not sure if it's a set in stone rule or if it's more of a like written, if it's a code that you're supposed to live by. And that's because I've seen situations where people have been left off of cups that should have been on there, and owners have taken more names for their families. Like there's only a certain amount of spots that you get, right? And so I'm not sure if it's like a legal in the CBA, you played X amount of games, you go on the Stanley Cup. I don't know the answer to that. Know-it-all Jeremiah in our chat seems to think that I'm wrong again, as he is pointing out. But
I know Bobby Bo is right about Delzato. Delzato got his name on the cup, and he didn't play a single game in the playoffs for the Blues. But that was something that they did for him because they loved him, and they thought like he deserved to have it on there.
How many games did he play during the regular season?
I don't know if it was like I think it was something that they did for him. Like they made sure
so they can always make that decision, right?
Yeah.
And what I'm saying is okay, so you have to play one game in the finals. So if you wouldn't have played a game in the finals if you got traded at the trade deadline. But you could you? When is the trade? Like how many games?
Delzato played 7 games in the regular season. He played 7
games and he still got on. So that was a decision.
Yeah, that was a decision.
So, but what I'm saying is what if you play 50 games for the Vegas Golden Knights and you get traded to St. Louis at the trade deadline? They go on to win. Does your name go on the cup?
Yeah, I believe so. Vic just said too. This is ChatGPT, but 41 games in the regular season or one final game. Yeah, I do believe that's the rule, though. I've heard that before. Like that. That's why I said I think
I have heard it too before. But is it in the CBA or is it an unwritten rule / code that teams live by? That would be my question. Because again, the question I'm having is if you've got traded and you played 41 games, but then you get traded away, does your name still go on the cup? I don't know the answer to that question.
So people are saying Ryan Whitney, but he played 28 games that year for Pittsburgh.
He didn't play 41. Okay, yeah. So that's my question. If you play 41 games and you get traded, do you go on the cup? I don't know the answer to that question. Would that be weird if you get traded at the trade deadline, your team wins, and then your name goes on the cup? Like, I don't know. Does that happen?
This is like so not I'm just gonna say I'm not gonna say it. I'll sound like a fucking loser. I can't say it. But like I feel like the guys who do get traded from a team that goes on to win still do like feel a part of that team. Like I know they didn't necessarily win it, but you do. Like I remember, this is what I was gonna say. Like I remember when I left UMass and they went to the national championship the year after. Like I still felt like a strong connection. Not that I'd ever feel like a champion, but it's hard to separate that. And that was a full year later.
We have different people in the chat saying different things. Jim the Swede says, Colby, there are rules, but the team that wins can seek approval from the league to go around them. The Stanley Cup team always trades players away, like at the trade deadline. Do those guys go on the cup if they played 41 games? Zach Boychuk, you're in our chat right now. Feel free to chime in. So that's what Jim the Swede said. Sharma says it depends on the team. Well, if it depends on the team, then okay, so Jim the Swede is saying if you're traded away, you are not on the cup. So if you play 50 games and get traded, you're not going on the Stanley Cup.
NY Marine, what if Vegas traded a player to Carolina and Vegas won the cup? What happened then?
I don't
well, that
think
was like,
you'd be,
yeah.
But that's what I'm saying. If we're all saying you're saying you just have to play 41 games. 41 games.
It might be a ring, though,
but you still have to be on that team is different than just playing 41 games. I'm asking. I truly do not know. I would think it would be weird to put a player on the Stanley Cup that played 50 games for you and then you traded away. Yeah, not on the cup.
Zach Boychuk,
away. Okay.
Maybe a ring, though?
That's it. Why would you get a ring? What would you be getting it for?
I don't know. I'm just saying maybe get the ring. I don't know. I remember there was a conversation. We'll go back to the NBA. Anderson Varejao got traded, I think, from the Cavs to the Warriors, and he was going to get a ring no matter what. Like, that was the conversation. But that was the NBA. So it's different.
Mm-hmm.
But all right. I do want to read one stat, though, because someone in our chat a little bit higher up said, has a team ever come back in the Stanley Cup Final from down 3-1? And, I always go to my friend Ben, who's really good with stats. And he said the 1942 Leafs are the only team, and it's either down 3-0 and 3-1 in the Stanley Cup Final. They're the only team that's come back from 3-1 and 3-0. Teams that go up 3-1 are 38-1 all time to close it out in the Cup Final. So Carolina would have a lot of odds stacked against them if they go down 3-1 tonight.
Mm-hmm. All right, Johnny, do bet 365 here.
That's it. You don't want to talk to me anymore today?
No, I mean, I just you read out your stat, and let's do our bet 365.
Yeah. Well, our bet 365 bet tonight is going to be a game time decision, actually. So watch out for it. There are a few things more stressful than a close hockey game. One late back check could make all the difference between a chance of playoff glory or an early spring tea time. That's why Bet365, an official partner of the NHL, is offering a 3-goal early payout. If the team you're riding goes up 3 goals at any point in the game, they'll pay your bet out early. Hockey fans have enough things to stress about. I'm a 3-goal early payout. Now your bets don't have to be one of them. Bet365. Download the app today. You must be 19 or older. Please play responsibly and listen carefully. Tonight, we are going to take the Carolina Hurricanes if Brandon Bussey is the starter. And Carolina money line right now is -115. Not sure how those odds will change. And if Freddie Anderson is the starter for Carolina, we are going to take the Vegas Golden Knights money line, which is -105 on home ice, which I find very interesting. So depending on who the starter is, that's the way I'm rolling. I do think Brandon Bussey can change the entire series. Like, I believe that. I tweeted that before he went in. I said the only thing that can change momentum for Carolina right now is by going to Bussey. So tonight, I think this could be a huge pivotal turning point, a narrative, a conversation that we can have tomorrow. We don't have any guests lined up for tomorrow's show. We will talk about this game tomorrow for the most part, unless any crazy news happens as well. But I expect Busty to be the starter. And if so, I expect Carolina to win. So that's all I'll say. Back to you, Colby, to finish up the show.
All right, make sure you hit the like button on today's episode. Make sure to subscribe to the Daily Faceoffs YouTube channel. We just hit 41,000 subscribers. I haven't necessarily looked at that as close. And so we continue to grow our subscriber count, which we appreciate. Go to Spotify, Apple Podcast, and Amazon Music, and make sure you download the audio version of the show. I went through the comments this morning on the YouTube stream. I responded to some of them. We talked about some of them on the show. Keep leaving those comments on the YouTube stream. Those are, I mean, again, if we didn't have all those comments yesterday, we probably wouldn't have talked about the Larkin thing again today. So again, when we see you guys are passionate about something, we'll continue to talk about it. Great having Vic back.
I was passionate about it too.
Obviously, we missed having our producer, so great to have Vic back with today's show. Today's Tuesday, right, Johnny? Yeah, today's only Tuesday, so we still have quite a bit of show left this week, and of shows left, I guess we should say, this week. So we'll continue to try to find people to chat with and get some different perspectives and different views on what's going on. So we appreciate you guys rolling with us today, and we will chat with you at all at 9 a.m. tomorrow.
What's up, everybody? Thanks for tuning in to Morning Cuppa Hockey here on the Daily Faceoff YouTube channel. If you enjoyed the show, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss an episode. And don't forget, we've got more great hockey content every day. You can catch DFO live at noon and stick around for the Sheet with Jeff Marek at 1 p.m. right here on Daily Faceoff. Until then, keep your coffee hot and your takes hotter.